Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. And if you're interested in growth, this is the episode for you because we have went out and found one of the best guest experts that we could find when it comes to transformational growth in all of our businesses. This is someone who you're going to see, he loves business from the inside out. He loves it at all different scales. This is someone who has led a business from $0, literally from scratch, to over $500 million. He's led an IPO. He's led so many mergers and acquisitions and exits. Today's guest, honestly, is living proof of what growth can be, how to achieve it, how to work towards it, how to strategize for it. I'm so excited for all of us to learn from today's guest. His name is Ken Gavranovic. Ken is a corporate growth architect. I love that title, architect. It's so revealing about his attitude towards growth is that you plan for it, you have a blueprint, and then you work towards it. So he's a corporate growth architect with over 2 decades of experience in scaling tech and SaaS companies. Ken has led businesses like web.com through IPOs. He's guided over 35 mergers and acquisitions, and he has helped generate hundreds of millions of dollars in new sales. He's also the CEO of Product Genius, which is an AI-driven platform revolutionizing business operations. It's very cool. It's basically like having an AI employee for your business. So we're definitely going to hear more about that from Ken here today. As a certified executive coach and thought leader, Ken empowers businesses to achieve transformative growth through innovation and leadership. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to learn and explore so much more with Ken today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Ken Gavranovic. All right, Ken, we are so very excited to have you on the show today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Brian, thanks so much. I'm glad for having a really nice intro. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Heck yeah, you make it easy because Ken, I always tell people I love entrepreneurship. Obviously, I'm super biased as the host of this show, but you love it just as much as I do. So I'm excited to go into your story. You've got to take us beyond the bio to kick things off. Who's Ken? How'd you start doing all these great things?
Right. Well, I always think maybe it's good to start off with the origin story, right? Because we all have a history, right? We grew up in some sort of circumstance that often impacts us. A lot of times we don't even realize it much further into life. And so when I grew up, one of the big things that I experienced is not being very wealthy. I knew what it felt like to not have money, to know what it was to kind of struggle to pay the bills. And that was something that motivated me. And so even as a young person, I said, well, I want more. I want to grow. And so entrepreneurship was the first path. And, that's what kind of started that whole journey. I'm just curious, did you ever, you're on your own journey too with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, Ken, I relate to it. It's something I forgot to ask you before we hit record today. I'm the son of an immigrant mom. So my mom's family is from Albania. It looks to me based on your last name, you're from my neck of the woods. We're neighbors in some sort. Yep. So yeah, grew up super hardworking family, didn't have money. I thought we were rich, Ken. I was convinced we were rich when I was a kid, but then I realized the value of hard work and how you can get anywhere you want to be.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's really what started me off. So as a young child, I was always like, hey, I thought money led to success, and I'll just share this. A lot of times, I think people get in entrepreneurship. They're like, money is going to be successul, or freedom. That's a big driver too. For me, it was money. I thought, well, if I just made a certain amount by this time, then I'd be happy and it'd be wonderful. And that's what started me on that journey. So I started in my early 20s, kind of building multiple businesses, taking the chance. And, when you do that at a young age, it's scary. And by the time I was 24, I probably started a couple of businesses, had a couple of first base hits, but I really wanted that big opportunity. And it really started in an interesting time. Like I think I told you, I started off in Texas, and then I got offered a lot of money to New York to run this business. And I found myself in a really interesting way. You ever been in that situation where you're kind of at that point in life, you're like, man, this is a pivotal moment. What am I going to do? And maybe I'll share a little bit about that New York experience first.
Yeah, please do, Ken. I'm excited to hear it.
All right. So I'd done a number of startups and built some businesses, and some people offered me a ton of money for Galveston, Texas, almost no money for New York. And I remember being in this little apartment in New York, and I read this book, Unleash the Giant Within, Tony Robbins. I don't know, are you a Tony Robbins fan? I know some people are, some people aren't.
Yeah, Unleash the Giant was my gateway drug to all of his work.
Oh, that's awesome. So I remember reading this book. My car was almost going to be repossessed. My apartment was behind. And I said, and the book was really all about empowerment, all about mindset, all about focus. And it was funny. 3 years later, I went from that apartment to actually building a company called web.com in Atlanta, Georgia, taking it from $0 to $200 million and actually driving it as an IPO. And so by the age of 30, I'd actually hit actually blew through all of my financial goals. And I thought, now I'm going to be happy and everything's going to be wonderful. And guess what happened, Brian?
Lay it on us.
Well, like many people, when you have that goal of money is the happiness, I was like, wait, I have all of my financial goals, but I hadn't hit all of the other things. And so with that, it kind of took me a moment to say, well, what do I want to do next? And I think that's where a lot of people are when they're in a entrepreneur. Maybe they've got that corporate job, they're sitting back and they're thinking, if I only do this, if I only do that, then I'll be happy, then I'll be successful and everything will be great. And I'm sure you see that with a lot of different guests.
Yeah, 100%. We're always chasing that next thing, for better and for worse, Ken.
Yeah. So it was an interesting time. So I was 30. I had just gotten to that point, and I'd already gone through some really interesting challenges. If you think about it, we went public after the dot-com crash. So as a 30-year-old, I remember before I even had built the company, web.com, going to pitch VCs. And I remember one time I was sitting in New York in this really beautiful VC office, and you look around and there's $1 million pictures here, $1 million pictures here, and I'm sitting down and I'm doing my presentation. And I remember the VC at the end, he said, so, Ken, what are you really saying? And this is at the beginning of the internet. So I've caught a couple of different waves, and I was really, really convinced that every business was going to run their business on the internet. And I remember this VC coming back to me and saying, kid, do you really believe your bullshit? And again, that's a great example. For me, it was the internet and that. But, I think when you start to have those ideas of that entrepreneur, there's going to be people, there's going to be thoughts that push you back and say, you can't do it. And the first step is to think about what they're saying and believe and have your convictions, have that mindset, and then you can really move forward.
Yeah. Ken, I want to jump into here because there's something you said in there that I feel like newer entrepreneurs in particular get wrong. And that is, you pointed out right there in your origin story that you had started multiple businesses. And I'm going to tag on to your baseball analogies, is that too many entrepreneurs, and especially entrepreneurs, think that the more I study, the more I strategize, the more I prepare, I'm going to hit a home run. When in fact, you have more chances of hitting a home run if you have 50 at-bats rather than just one that you've put all of your eggs into. Talk to us about that, because it seems to me like you just continued swinging as many times as it took.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think the first part is you've got to believe in yourself, because you can overanalyze anything. That's funny. I was reading, there was a Harvard Business Review article that said if you look at most business decisions, if you look at the ones where someone spent 6 months to do it or 1 month to do it, statistically, there is no difference in the accuracy or success. So the key is to think about what you're trying to do, certainly get your direction, get your initial strategy, but then go forward, make the choices and learn. So you might start in this direction. There's many businesses I've started where it's like, this is the path to success. But if you listen to what people are saying, listen to what the market's telling you, and then pivot, that's what's going to be the key difference.
Yeah, I want to talk about belief then, because I love how many times it's already come up in our conversation to this point. Clearly, it's important to you, and I think that it took me a long time. I started my first business when I was 19 years old, and I was lucky to be naive then that I didn't have any of those limiting beliefs. But, graduating college, having student loan debt, entering the quote-unquote real world, I started to realize all these risks and all these calculations and all these limiting beliefs that society places upon us as well. And Ken, it took me a while to really understand at my core, not just in my words or in my actions, what belief really meant. What does it mean to you?
Well, I think belief means that, at the highest level, you're going to be okay. And if you get focused in your direction and simply just take the next best step towards the area you want to go, the right thing's going to happen. I have a spiritual beliefs, but whatever belief system you have, I'm a big believer is all you have to do is take the next step, show up for opportunity, keep moving, and the right thing will unfold. And I've seen that happen time and time again. And, I've got an interesting story. One time, I'm sure you've heard of Benchmark Capital or Excel. So I've worked with some of the biggest VCs across the globe. And just a gentleman one time, I remember sitting down with Bill Gurley. He was the guy who funded Uber. He was in the Uber movie, if you've seen that. And I was sitting with Bill Gurley, and he was talking about his investment in Zillow. And at that point, Zillow was failing in every single measurement. And I asked Bill, I said, why did you guys invest in Zillow? It seems like a terrible idea. And he said, Ken, we got the entire leadership team from Expedia. And we're a big believer here at Benchmark. If we get smart people with smart ideas, they're going to keep pivoting until they figure it out. And so not only is this a great thing for us to think about, but some of the best minds in venture capital, that's how they operate. They bet on ideas, certainly. But number one, they bet on the entrepreneur. They bet on the people that are going to break through those obstacles. So it is really as simple as saying, I'm going to move forward. I don't know if I'm going to get the exact path that I want or if it's going to be the exact pace that I want. But all I have to do is take the next best step.
Yeah, I love that, especially because I feel like societally, we almost act like there's some sort of dichotomy between pivoting and we attach meanings to that of, oh, did you fail? But a pivot is completely different. And I always think about that false dichotomy between pivoting and consistency. I work with a former professional soccer player, and he's a personal trainer. And Ken, he always gives me the advice. He's like, if you're not going to go to the gym for 2 months in a row, don't bother going at all, because you need that level of consistency. And so when I think about business, when I started this podcast, I said, if I'm not going to make it to episode 50, I'm not going to do one episode whatsoever. Talk to me about that, because obviously we have to keep going without seeing those results immediately. There's a little bit of a delayed gratification there, but also we have to know when to pivot. I'd love to hear some of your insights there.
Well, it's funny. I think it's actually I used to think through, and all of it. You have lots of questions. I think it's as simple as resistance. If you're making the right decisions, if you're moving in the right direction, things will get easier. If you're taking the steps consistently and you consistently have friction and blockers and stuff, that's when it's time to pivot. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, which part of that is intuition, Ken, and you have years of experience to glean from. What did those early days look like? Because it's fun in hindsight, and on these podcast episodes, I feel like people always see the success story. What were those early days like for you that gave you enough insight, faith, intuition to say, this is the right thing to be working on?
Well, I think that's great. So I'll talk about from a startup perspective, and then I'll maybe share some examples where I've worked with other companies where there's young startup, entrepreneurs where I help them grow and have a big exit. Maybe that might be an interesting way to approach it. So I think your question is like, how do you know? What do you do? What's the best way to research? I think the first thing is trends. If you think, I'll go back to VCs and the way I think about things is if you're in a big trend early on, then you have an advantage. First mover advantage. So first thing is I like to look at trends. Is this the beginning of a change? Because then you don't have to be the only right person. You're riding that wave. So I think trends are first. So look at big trends and opportunities. So for myself, the beginning of the internet, it was very clear, back when the internet started, and I was in my 20s, that this is going to be transformative. Later I got into public cloud transformation and what they call digital transformation, and did that for many different companies and spoke across the globe. But many companies were operating still in this old way. And it was very clear to me as a trend that many of them are going to move into this more digital transformation. Now you hear every business is a digital business. And I think the same thing, like right now I'm in another trend that I think is going to be just as huge as AI. I think AI is going to transform every single business. It's already impacting our lives. And so if you can build a business in that space, you have an opportunity. And then the next step is, okay, in this big transformation state, where's a place that I can play where maybe my skills, my knowledge is a differentiator? If you do those two things, then you've got a lot of wind at your back from success.
Yeah, I want to talk about that term of obviously a corporate growth architect. You already know from the intro how much I love that label with regards to what you do. I'm a visual person, so when I hear architect, I immediately picture blueprints. With that in mind, Ken, what are the ingredients? If we're building a building, we know there's walls, there's windows, there's a roof. What are those equivalents in terms of how to build a business?
It's a good question. So on how to build a business, and it's funny, I actually wrote a book, Business Breakthrough 3.0, where my partner who actually invented parts of the Amazon AWS system, we talk a lot about this. But I think, when you're building a business, aside from, that trend, is this the right idea? Is this at the right time? What skills do I bring in? But then it really is the people process, the people that you are going to partner with, the culture, the value alignment. If you have those things at the key parts at the starting, I think those are the key elements to get started in that entrepreneurial journey. So then you're aligned in values, you're at the right time, and then you just take those step backs and focus on execution.
Yeah, execution. That's where all the money is. That's something that I think most entrepreneurs, it's the biggest difference maker between businesses that grow and those that don't. Ideas are a dime a dozen. I would actually argue that because of AI, ideas are the easy part now. And I do want to piggyback onto that because you were at the heyday of the internet. You talk about the big web boom back in your web.com days. Is AI that big of a disruptor? You talk about every business is going to be on the web one day, which, spoiler alert, we all are. You are absolutely correct in that prediction. What's the impact of AI going to be?
AI is going to be, I think, more impactful than the internet, and it's going to be impactful in every single part of your life. So, when I think about, first of all, like if you're thinking about a job, there's going to be a lot of jobs that are simply going to go away. Customer service is one that you're going to see AI automate early. So anybody whose role is do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, rinse and repeat. That's something, if that's your career, I suggest you look at other opportunities because AI is going to be very ripe to disrupt that. I think if you run a business and you're not using AI, and your competitors are, you're going to be in big trouble. I'll give you an example right now. A lot of VC companies are seeing that when they're building software, say it's a SaaS company, if they don't have their developers use AI, they go about 35% slower than another startup. So what you're already seeing is people are to build software and go faster and faster than they ever could before with the same investment. So AI is absolutely going to impact how you build software, the jobs that we have, and really is the profitability of your business. I work with some companies where, again, we've seen, like, for example, building software, literally a 30% increase in velocity. Just tremendous difference. And with Product Genius, for example, is a new company that I've started. We're working with, basically brick and mortar businesses, and we're giving them AI intelligence where they can actually capture their customers' ideas, whether they have questions, whether they have feedback. And it basically takes all of those ideas and feedbacks and questions and turns it into clear profiles, the clear pattern of what customers are doing and what you can do to improve your business. So it literally can tell you, hey, you have a staffing problem from 11 to 2 on Fridays. Things that you would have taken months to learn, now you can learn literally in weeks. So it's going to be transformational in every part of your life. So I suggest anybody who's thinking about AI to do the research and think about how it's going to impact what you're doing, your business, because it can either help you or it can really, really hurt you.
Yeah, and the word that you use there is obviously velocity, and I think about the accelerating force of AI. Whether we're talking about ideas, I can come up with 200 ideas right now by just asking ChatGPT a basic question, or accelerating our workflows, just easing the load on. I love the Product Genius example that you gave us about identifying staffing issues, that as humans with multivariate analyses, there's so many different things going on that we can't compute that way. Let me ask you about that accelerated growth, because to me, Ken, as soon as we came across your work, you're the growth guy. I was just like, we need to hear his insights on that. I also know, though, having been in business for 16 years myself, is that there's all these sorts of inflection points. For example, getting your first customer or client, for sure, the first inflection point. Reaching your first 5K month for a lot of people, that's a big inflection point. 10K a month. Obviously, people want to scale from there. You've grown to huge scales, Ken. What are those inflection points? And I'm curious the way that your mind works, because I know it's not necessarily measured in revenue. What are the ways that we change as an organization over time with that growth?
It's a good question. So maybe I'll take that as an example. I'll go into a particular example. So a couple of years ago, I worked with a VC-funded company, and since I'm a little bit further in my career these days, I was effectively the adult supervision. So it was two 24-year-old Columbia graduates who had built this startup and got it funded with venture, and they had grown it really nice from around, let's say, $0 to $4 million. But they were kind of getting stuck, kind of plateauing. And it was really going back to people, process, and technology. They didn't put repeatable processes. They didn't put in measurements. Are we moving forward? Are we actually making steps forward? And so when I came in to work with that team, we got really, really focused on let's put in process and procedure so that we measure what we're doing and is it very valuable. One of the things that you hear me talk about in different podcasts and things is I call it, really outcomes over activity. A lot of times what businesses do is they do a lot of activity, but is it actually driving it forward? So in that particular company, it was really, really interesting. We went in 9 months, we really changed the process. We made sure that the things that we did all were moving us forward in a measurable way. So it was follow the process, show the results, measure it. Are we moving forward? If not, change it. And so the actions that we were doing that were delivering low value went away, and we emphasized more and more things that move it forward. That company went from 4 to 10 million, and we were able to sell it for $81 million in less than 10 months. So it's really, really powerful when you get focused on what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then looking at your activities and making sure your activities are highly tuned to driving those outcomes.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking, Ken. I think that that's revealed in your answer, not just the wisdom that you're sharing with us, but really the way you think about it. That's probably very new for a lot of listeners and a lot of entrepreneurs around the world, is that you're talking about high value activities, and it sounds like you're very specific about this is the goal, this is the target, and here's the activities that support it. Talk to me about some of those, because I feel like people get hyper fixated on just revenue, which for sure that's an important barometer, and it's a lesson I've learned over my own career is you should look at revenue, and that should be one of your driving forces. What are those other categories that you look for those high value activities in?
It's good. Well, let's go back to frameworks for example. I'm a big fan of objective key results. So I think you said, what are the objectives? But I think a lot of people don't even have that. So what are the objectives we're trying to achieve? We're trying to increase revenue by a certain amount. We want a certain level of customer satisfaction. Maybe we want a certain level of referrals, or we want to see that we've got a flywheel effect where people are coming in and referring their friends. But I think the first part is, what are those objectives? Get really, really clear for your business. And accordingly, there's certainly SaaS metrics you can look at, like cost of customer acquisition, and we can go through. And that's a great example for ChatGPT. You might say, what are the key measurements for success for the particular industry that I'm in? So that gives you your objectives. But then what are the key results that you're going to achieve that lets you know that you're actually moving towards those objectives? That's the part I think a lot of people miss. The amount of times I've gone into companies, the individuals that are working really, really hard, delivering almost no results, it's all because they were doing objectives. And this works at a very small company or a very large company. I'll give you an example. Once I was working with the top 5 healthcare company that was doing a cloud transformation. So the mission was, hey, if we go to this public cloud, then suddenly we're going to build software better and everything's just going to magically happen better. And so the objective was move to the cloud. And so what they did is they moved to the cloud the first time, failed because they didn't accomplish any of their objectives. So they said, oh, that must have worked wrong. Let's move to the cloud again. And they literally did this 3 times where they moved to the cloud and failed every single time because they set the wrong objective. It wasn't to move to the cloud. It was to build software faster. It was to make software better and more secure. And so I think you could take those same type of lessons into your business or into your life. What am I doing? What are my objectives? What do I want to accomplish? If you want to be an entrepreneur, great. So I want to be an entrepreneur by this date. Great. So what objectives, what are the key results that I know I'm actually moving forward in that direction versus just a bunch of activity?
Yeah, Ken, you brought up dates, so I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is a question that's so hard to answer because there is no one right answer. But obviously, within the world of entrepreneurship and just humanity as a whole, we love results. We love instant gratification. The reason why people don't go to the gym is because if you and I went today, we're going to look the exact same way a day from now. And so that's the hard part. When you look at timelines, I'm curious to hear where your executive brain goes. Do you operate in quarters, years? How far out are you looking? And I'll add this one other thing into the conversation is that one of my closest entrepreneurial friends, someone who I really admire, he's an Ironman. He's competed for Team USA and the World Triathlon Championships. And he always says, be patient for results, but impatient for action. So I'm curious what your timelines look like with regards to here's the strategy we're setting today versus here's the results that we're looking for down the line.
That's great. So I think for me, I do it two ways. Is one, I actually go for, I'd say at the very highest level, maybe you have a quarterly or a yearly goal. But where I really focus is much more on my monthly goals and even my daily goals. So every single day, I wake up and focus on what are the key things that I want to accomplish today that move me towards that monthly or quarterly or maybe yearly goal, and really focus again on just repeating those steps every single day. Because a lot of people get focused on like, I've got this yearly plan and I've got this, and you get in your head, but it really is all about the day-to-day steps. And if you can actually, there's a lot of data around this. If you could do something as simple as every day, take 3 steps into the North Star of where you want to take your life, take 3 actionable steps every single day, you'll get to where you want to go dramatically faster than almost any other planning mechanism.
Yeah, I love that, especially that North Star analogy. It's one we hear a lot in life and in business. But hearing you build that into your daily workflow, it sounds like you check the compass every single morning and you say, all right, what's that direction that I want to go in? And what are the actions that support that? Yeah, Ken, you're holding it up. Share it with our listeners. I want to hear that, the counter to the to-do list.
Well, everything is, it's just that that's my today list, right? Real simple. But, focusing on that. And again, there's other types of, frameworks and planning to break it up more quarterly. I like some of Michael Hyatt's planning books. If you haven't seen those are pretty good things to consider too.
Yeah, really well said. Michael Hyatt, I swear, he's one of the most underrated gurus. And the more I see how much he supports big visionaries, people who are growing huge businesses behind the scenes, he doesn't get enough credit. So Ken, I love the fact that you injected Michael Hyatt into this. Every year he launches towards the tail end of the year, the perfect year planning method. And it asks just such poignant questions. So actually, it gives me the chance to put you on the spot, Ken. What are some of the big questions that you ask yourself when you sit down for executive time? Obviously, you look at the direction you're moving in, but what are some of the strategic questions that you ask yourself and that you ask of the businesses that you work with?
That's great. Well, if you would have caught me much younger, I guess I mentioned I would have said success is really money in all business. But one of the big lessons that I've learned, and I suggest, and if I work with a company, I say success is much bigger than that. And if you really want to be successful, you've got to think about the whole self. So your physical conditioning, you talked about that. That's something that if you would have caught me, you could look at, used to look like the stereotypical nerd, right? Because I didn't pay attention to health. You think about family and friends, and then you think about business, you think about finance. But you really have to think about all of those. I think Hyatt has a thing he calls it. I focus on 4. I think he has like a triple win strategy. But I think that's one of the key things is you actually have to focus on winning at all 4 or 3 of those categories, not just one.
Yeah. Talk to us about that, Ken, because a lot of people might look at your career and say, okay, growing web.com to hundreds of millions, leading an IPO, being involved in so many mergers and acquisitions. I'm sure people, Ken, would like to simply label you and say, there's no way this guy has a work-life balance. Talk to us about fitting all those in, because that right there, the fact that you called out that part of Michael Hyatt's approach shows me that you excel and focus on all aspects of life, because when one goes up, it has a tendency to lift the others. And conversely, when one thing goes down, that's why we say health is wealth. Talk to us about the balance and the fitting in of everything.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's difficult, and I haven't always done it. But when I'm always looking to continuously improve. And one of the things that's been very clear is that if you want to come to the game of life in the best way, you want to have the best mental health. The data is pretty clear. If you have good relationships with family, friends, it's really important. And you have to think again, what are we doing all of this for? Because at the end of the day, we're only going to be on this planet for this much time, whatever this is. And I've seen too many situations where people, have $300 million and they totally disconnect with their family. They go through divorce. Their children are miserable. You really, really have to have that thing, the focus across the board. And if you think about even problem solving, if you come to it and your relationships are terrible, your health's terrible, you're not going to bring the best you to fight in business. If you're really focused on personal only, maybe you're not going to bring the best business and you won't have the financial success you want. So you really have to have that balance of all three, and the balance that's right for you. I have some friends that, they work at a big corporate job and they're happy and they've got the balance for them. So I think for everybody, it's different. What's those elements and what's the most important thing? But it is a balance of all three is the key to accomplish your overall goal, which I think is, and the data is pretty clear. Again, going back to Harvard Business Review did a study, is if you make over $50,000 a year, there's no difference in happiness, more money, more success. It's when you have that family relationship, when you have a certain amount of money, when you have that success, that's when you're truly happy, which I think is what we all really want.
Yeah, I'm really glad and grateful, Ken, that you called that out, because I think we lose sight of that in entrepreneurship. Especially, I remember in my early 20s when I would tune into entrepreneurial podcasts, all I wanted was strategy. I was like, give me the next marketing strategy, give me all these things. But you're bringing the real stuff to us. And that's what I so appreciate, and why listeners all around the world tune in, because of amazing guests like you. So I'm super grateful for that, Ken. I want to squeeze in 2 more questions, because I know that you are focusing on product genius. I also know that you continue to help so many incredible companies. Your client roster is a bunch of brands that we all know, love, and use in our day-to-day lives. So, Ken, with all of those things in mind, what's your focus area? What can we look out for from Ken Gavranovic over the next 12 months and beyond?
We asked 2 things. So I do have a coaching business where I work with a couple of people, but I don't really do that for profit. It's very select. I work with people that I really want to grow, and that they seem like the right people. So it kind of has to be a good fit. So I do that couple of hours a week, with companies or select individuals that I like growing with. And what I'm really focused right now is product genius. I'm a big believer that AI is going to be huge. And I've been doing AI for the last 6 years at companies like New Relic, at companies like Blameless, where you think about when Ticketmaster, when software breaks, we had a software solution that actually fixes that. I think AI is going to be huge. I've been doing it in enterprise, and now we're going to bring it down to small to medium-sized business. And I think that's going to have tremendous dividends for them. So I'm really excited as we're rolling out into anything from pizzerias, chains, restaurants, and seeing the difference that it's making in businesses. And I'll just do a small little plug for Product Genius, if that's okay. But Product Genius, literally, a business can put signage inside their store, and it starts to collect what their customers and their employees are thinking. And the owner of the business literally gets an email every week with doing absolutely nothing, where it says, here's the top trends in your business, here's what you can do, and here's the action items. And if you do that, here will be the improvement to your business. And I think that's astonishing, the amount of value you can bring to the business owner. So I'm really, really excited about that. And that's really where we see a lot of focus in the coming months.
Yes. And listeners, total spoiler alert, you already know that we're going to be dropping the link to Product Genius in the show notes, and Ken's going to talk about that link in just a minute. But before we get there, Ken, I want to put you on the spot with a super broad question, and that is, what's your one best piece of advice, the one action or the one takeaway, knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all over the world at all different stages of their business growth? What's that one thing you want them to walk away from today's episode with?
Well, sometimes the simplest things I think are the most powerful. Believe in yourself. There's going to be people that are going to doubt you. If you're successful, like I've had people where they're jealous of my success or they're this, but if you just believe in yourself, because who else do you want to believe in? Believe in yourself that you will figure out the right way and you'll keep making the next step. If you do that, you'll go where you want. When you doubt yourself or believe what other people think or feel you can't do it, that's when you get stuck and you never actually try. If you think about life, I would always rather try and fail than have never tried at all. And it all starts with believing in yourself.
Yes, important advice for every single one of us at every step of our journey. It's not advice that we can hear Ken say to us today and just forget about it. It's advice we need to embrace and make it a part of our daily routines and habits and attitudes towards life and business. So Ken, I'm super appreciative of that. Like I said, you owe us some links because I think what you're doing with Product Genius, it's going to be really cool to see how it manifests not only now, but also long into the future. Because I'll say this publicly, Ken, is that it's clear to me that you bring not just a tech and software approach to Product Genius, not just an AI approach, but it's so rooted in sound business strategy and ROI. I love the way you present, here's what it's going to do for your business. Here's the entire purpose of why you should even care about this and use it at all. And then also you've got amazing videos to see it in action. So with all of that said, that's just my personal little teaser, but drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
So if you want to learn more about Product Genius, just go to productgenius.guru, Guru. And then going back to guarantees, we've seen so much success. We actually give the software away to our customers for free with a 30-day trial. And then further, we say if you don't get $15,000 in value in the first year, then we give you a 100% money back guarantee with no questions asked. We're that confident. We've seen customers just sending us notes besides themselves how much value they get almost immediately. So just go to productgenius.guru. And then separately, if you've got somebody that you think I can help, I actually have some courses on kind of entrepreneurship, leadership, totally free. That's part of my way to give back. I've been very successful and very blessed. You can go to my name, kengavranovic.com, KenGavranovic.com. And I've got some free courses. If that could be of any help to you or somebody else, feel free to take a look and sign up.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You can find Product Genius very simply at productgenius.guru, or you can click right on through. And Ken is not kidding when he says his website is a wealth of resources for you. He's got free courses on there. He's got a link to his book, Business Breakthrough 3.0. There's so many goodies there. So I feel like time absolutely flew by in this episode, Ken, and it's because you're a wealth of knowledge and stories and real life examples about all of these topics. So listeners, if you want to go deeper into the wonderful world of everything that Ken is doing, definitely check out those links down below, not only to Product Genius, but his personal website as well. You'll find both of those. Ken, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Brian. It's been great. And everybody, go for it.